and welcome back to another Artifact Corner. Today we will be looking at a picture taken of Fannie Delord Webb Hall. This portrait was taken sometime in the early 1870s. It appears that Fannie was dressed in full black, which means she was likely in full mourning. Her grandmother Betsey died on May 23, 1870, and it's very likely that this portrait was taken sometime shortly after Betsey's death. The skirt and the jacket are very indicative of the early 1870s. Let's learn a bit more about women's fashions in the 1870s. When most of us think of the 1860s, we think of the massive hoop skirts that mimicked the shape of a bell. That shape was very prevalent throughout the decade, but as we approach 1870, the skirt shape changed quite dramatically. All of the volume from the previous decade has now shifted to the back of the skirt. Here's a quote from the Fashion Institute of Technology. The first silhouette of the decade began in 1870. The great circular or oval crinolines of previous decades collapsed into the so-called first bustle style. The bustle was a softly draped protrusion at the back of the waist, created by a manipulation of fabric and drapery. This sloped bustle style was supported by horsehair ruffled petticoats or crinolets, an adaptation of the earlier steel crinolines. A crinolet consisted of rows of fabric-covered steel hoops. Bustle dresses of this period were frothy confections, with layers of ruffles, pleats, and gathers. The silhouette of the first half of the 1870s was also defined by a higher-than-natural waistline and lower-sloped shoulders. Bodices frequently featured basques, a kind of peplum extending past the waistline. Basques combined with the overskirts to create a layered look, and the trim on the basques usually matched that of the overskirts. The second silhouette of the 1870s began around 1876. The bustle collapsed into the princess line style, named for Alexandra, Princess of Wales, who popularized the look. It consisted of a dress without a horizontal waist seam, fitted instead with long vertical tucks and darts to create an extremely slim, body-conscious look. Similarly, the princess line was echoed in the cuirass bodice. It did not have a waistline seam and was lengthened to fit over the hips. Snug around the hips, princess line dresses and cuirass bodices lacked a bustle, with volume instead spilling from below the hips and sometimes from below the knees. This fullness could extend into long trains even on day dresses. The waistline dropped to the natural waist in princess line looks. Additionally, shoulder seams began to creep slowly upwards, and sleeves tightened, further accentuating the long, slim line. Throughout the decade, dresses generally followed the 19th century customs delineating morning, afternoon, and evening wear. The chief differences were in the cut of the neckline and the length of sleeves. It was not uncommon to have two bodices for each skirt, a day and an evening option. Outerwear changed during this period from earlier decades. Previously, shawls and capes had been the most fashionable, but the new bustle styles were better served by coats and jackets. Our portrait of Fannie is in really good condition and a spot-on example of early 1870s women's fashion. It's a lovely portrait of Fannie, who at the time would have been just 36 years old, and, even though in mourning, still dressed very fashionably for the time period. Thanks so much for stopping by.